Hello, everyone. Welcome to C-Suite Talks. We speak with industry leaders, introducing you to some of the most interesting people and businesses today. We are focused on women, money, and power, as well as diversity in all areas. Welcome to C-Suite Talks. I'm Dianne Gubin, co-CEO, along with...
And I'm Beth Hilbing. This week, we're speaking with Daniel Olexa, founder of Transcendent LLC Leadership and Executive Coach, and a member of C-Suite. So thank you very much for that. With decades of experience in business, leadership development, and deep transformational coaching, he has trained over 3,500 people globally to become coaches and mentored over 110 coaches. That's absolutely fabulous.
Wow.
To earn their credentials with a 100% success rate. He's trained leaders across industries and helped countless individuals break free from the limitations they thought were permanent. So thank you to our listeners and welcome Daniel to C-Suite Talks.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Great. So let me kick us off. So, tell us and our listeners, what is Transcendent Living? What is that? And tell us about the work you're doing.
So the work I'm doing is really helping individuals and particularly leaders get out of the stories of limitation of who they think they are, the rules they think they're supposed to play by, to get results that are above and beyond what everybody says is normal, which is the definition of transcendence. And really tapping into, it sounds so cliche, it just is the thing in the industry, tapping into their personal power and really it's a remembering of who they are versus who they've learned to be.
So who are we versus who we've learned to be? What?
Interesting.
Isn't who you've learned to be who you are now?
Not necessarily. What I've noticed is individuals who come to me are at a point, and maybe it's because this is the point I was at about 10 years ago, of doing all the things, checking all the boxes of, oh, if I do this, I'll be happy. And if I do that, I'll be happy. And everybody tells me if I check this box over here. So have the house, have the relationship, have the nice car, have the extra toys, and you'll be happy. And I wasn't. And I find my clients go through that same thing. And those are all the rules we live by, that culturally, family, society says, do these things, and this is what will be happy, but it's all outside of us. And when I came to that separation of, this isn't working, and I know life can be better, but I can't tell you how yet. I just know this is not it. And I started to explore who I was and realized that I was living by stories that were my parents, of what it was like to get money. They grew up during the Depression. So even when I was growing up in the 70s, there were all these stories and generation of lack, that every time you get $1, somebody's there to take it away. And just this whole robber baron idea that, strangely enough, is back in the concept. But I realized that what they went through, I was carrying forward generationally as though it was my story, and it wasn't. And I finally shed it to become who I am rather than who I learned to be by being part of that family.
Oh, that's very interesting. So with that, what are some, as you coach these leaders, these C-suite individuals, what are some of the challenges and fears and so forth that you have to coach them on in their careers?
Yeah, I mean, is there one thread usually that?
Yeah, the one thread at the core of all of it, if I were to break all the work I do and the work of anybody in the giving service fields of therapy, counseling, coaching, all of it, the core idea is the person isn't good enough or undeserving. That somewhere we get this story of, I don't deserve it, so they sabotage because it's the underlying subconscious belief. So they'll start to take the steps toward achievement. They have the idea, and then they'll either get there and find a way to sabotage it because the underlying belief is, I don't deserve to be here, or I'm not worthy of it, and they'll sabotage themselves along the way as they get closer and closer, so they never reach the achievement.
So if it's
to take it to that other step.
Yeah. So if so many of us have that, how do we all fix it?
Well, and Daniel, I'll tell you, like, I know
you pay me a lot.
a lot of money. Yeah. So I know myself sometimes when I've reached a pinnacle in the career or finances or something, then it's almost like I just relax and then it starts to slip and then I have to go back up again. Is that what you're referring to?
There's that, which is a slightly different aspect of neuroscience. That when we're pursuing a goal, we get flooded with dopamine. We get a dopamine rush. I really want to get there. And then as we get closer or at the point when we achieve the goal, the dopamine rush stops. We're like, oh, okay, I'm here. Good enough. And that's when that backslide starts.
Yeah.
And the way to shift that is, let's use the easy one. Let's say it's an annual salary number. That's an easy one for everybody to kind of grab a hold of. Okay, I got there. And so we stop, like, level achieved, unlock next level, but we never unlock the next level. It would then be to say, what's my goal on top of that? Now that I've gotten here, how do I re-engage? Or as we get closer to that number, I forget who it was that wrote the book about this. As you get close, you up the goal. So it's always slightly out of reach. And then you keep pursuing it. So the dopamine rush keeps flowing.
That's really good advice. Thank you. I'm going to take heart to that on some things. So
Yeah,
thank you for that.
I have to absorb that a little bit for sure.
So tell me the difference between someone who has learned to be versus who they really are. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, what I've noticed with clients over the years is when they come in, they'll have a story of who they are, and it tends to be locked in what's known as imposter thinking or imposter self, of the not good enough, can't get there, it's too hard to. And that's what they've been living by. Yet, if they truly believed that, they would have never picked up the phone to seek help. So there's this other side that knows more, that's saying, that's a bunch of nonsense over there. Go look for somebody to help unlock me so that I can help you live the life that's really here for you. And that's what I find is a lot of my work is the person who comes in, they're so locked up in the imposter thought of what they're allowed or not allowed to do, that they haven't tuned into what the deeper calling is of why they're even reaching out to begin with. And once we tap into that, all bets are off.
That's a lot of time.
It is. It's really hard to describe most of the time.
Yeah.
So how did, I'm going to kind of switch gears a little and we'll go back to this, but how did you come into this field? Kind of tell us a little bit about your background and your journey, because we forgot to do that. We just jumped right in
How
there.
do you get to be this expert that helps everybody figure out where their imposter syndrome is?
So on one level, it's always been me. I think back to my childhood. I've always had an interest in personal growth and the power of the mind. And then I went off and did the things that I was told to do, that don't do that because there's no money in it. Go do this thing instead. And worked in sales and marketing for 20 plus years, 30 years. And at the point when I burned out in 2013, that's when I kind of realized it for myself. The joke I make about it is my last 15 years in that industry, I worked for 3 different family-owned companies and had the wrong last name at every one of them. But I had reached this point of burnout, of trying to control everything because I didn't feel supported in my role, and was going through, at that time, the end of my first marriage, going through the separation. I'd really kind of lost myself and was only seeing constant problems in front of me. Was introduced to a hypnotherapist in Kansas City. We did 3 sessions together to kind of help me get my mojo back. And then when my current wife and I, Sarah, got together, we moved from Kansas City down to Naples, Florida, and I had to go through a reinvention. And one of those moments of universal alignment, I mentioned to her, I'm kind of thinking about going into hypnotherapy. And she said, well, see what's out there for training. Looked online that night. At the time, there was one school in Florida teaching a state-certified 500-hour program with campuses in all the major cities, Tampa, Orlando, Miami, and this little town called Naples where we were going to be living. And it was just one of those shut up and take my money moments. I know what I'm supposed to do. And that was the start of this journey that's unlocked so much of what I've always been interested in, and taken it to the next level with being able to help others.
So do you use hypnosis regularly within the work you're doing for your clients?
The ones who want it, I don't force it on anybody, because for some, there's the misconception of what hypnosis is from seeing TV and movies and stage shows, which is that's for entertainment. It's an entirely different thing. Some of it's real, most of it isn't.
Sure.
For hypnotherapy, it's about really getting to these core underlying beliefs that are operating as a program or a subroutine that are creating the results and the events and the behaviors that are how they're showing up in life. So we'll go in and get an understanding of what is that story and where did it come from, and then we can actually rewrite it and rescript it so that they start living the empowered mindset instead.
Yeah, they definitely would have to be in a safe place to do that, know that nothing was being discussed outside of you and so forth and so on.
No, for sure. And I used hypnotherapy when I had to take tests as an adult, because I had so much test anxiety. But I don't think I even thought about it for it's shifting life purposes and some of the stuff
really
you mentioned.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So what do you think is, and what do you believe the really root of most people's challenges in life? I know we kind of probably hit some of that, but is there anything
parents,
different?
Beth, it's got to be our parents.
Exactly.
I'm sure my kids are coming back to me, and I am the core of every issue for them.
You're like a lot of other parents. You got to kick them out first.
Actually, I think I failed that already. Daniel?
Go ahead, Daniel. Sorry.
On one level, I'm right there with you on the parent thing. I'm actually co-writing a book right now, and part of the writing is tapping into just who I've been and tapping into what happened during my youth and growing up. And as I'm writing and the feelings are coming forward, like, my parents screwed me up. Then I had an experience in Peru a couple years ago where they've both passed. I met them and had this massive release of gratitude of, I can't be who I am, and I wouldn't be who I am if you weren't who you were. So I could complain about the events all along, but they've made me who I am. So there's a lot of acceptance that comes with it. And after that, really it comes down to, what do we believe we deserve in this experience called life? And how do we hold ourselves back from it if we are not living up to that higher ideal?
Ooh. Well, that brings us to the question of, you talk about living outside the noise and distractions in the world. So how do you live up to your ideal and still focus and protect your energy? Because there's so much busyness around all of us, right?
Stop. Just stop.
I just did.
When we lived in Naples, and I've shared this with students, invariably when hurricane or high level gale force winds would come through, blows through, the next day there would be a TV reporter standing at the base of a big oak tree that had been toppled, and there's this 8 or 10 foot diameter root structure, and reporter of average height, mid 5 feet, is standing there. Look at the wide root base of this, and it was toppled by the powerful winds. Yeah, it looks really good until you walk about 90 degrees around and realize that root structure is this deep, because the water table in Florida is so high that once it hit, its needs were met. It never went deep to find stability. It just stayed on the surface. And the same thing happens with us as people. If we don't go within ourselves and find our stability and really our grounding in our core, we'll get toppled when all the stuff in the world, like is happening now, without going into any more than that, when there's a lot of confusion, a lot of noise in the world, whether it's at the level of international, country, or even within a company, when we get distracted and caught up in that noise, we begin to spin, and we are not at our foundational place of core strength and grounding. And it's just stop, take the break, come back to self, and really get out of the spin of the head and sometimes the spin of the feelings, and come back to the core of the gut where the wisdom is.
Right. Well, that's wonderful. So what has as you work with these executive clients, what has surprised you the most from them over the years?
But they all pretty much have the same story. It is this common set of experiences that seem to be a human thing. And so many of them feel like somebody's going to find out I don't know what I'm doing, or that I'm not as good as they think I am. It just blows my mind.
So you think a lot of it's the imposter syndrome, and then that's a challenge, but that also holds them back too.
Right, right. I felt that way the other day, and I actually had to talk myself into, why I was there and really of worth within that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's weird how it comes up, and I've noticed it. I can't say it's everybody, but vast majority, it is the same story with different details.
What are you focused on now? What are your goals for this year? What are you looking to achieve this year?
My one goal is to really up-level the field of coaching to, on an international level, to no longer be the fodder for jokes of comedians and sitcoms. It is such a powerful modality that has been around for the better part of 40 years, even though it seems like it's just come about in the past 5 or 10. It is a powerful way to help people come back and take ownership of their lives. But because it's an unlicensed, unregulated field, and it's like the Wild West out there, that the general public doesn't know the difference between a credentialed coach and somebody who watched a Tony Robbins video and says, "Hi, I'm a coach today. I'm going to tell you how to live your life." Get out of my industry. Seriously, get out of my industry right now.
Right. Yeah, we have heard that complaint too. With C-suite, we have coaches, and some of the executive coaches have said that there's a lot. There's this cross between credentialed coaches and others, and they can do more damage than good. And people need to realize the differences. And it's like anything else; you need to pay for your services because you get what you pay for, right?
Yeah.
So,
and I've experienced uncredentialed coaches who I'm part of the ICF, the International Coaching Federation. They're the big dog in the field.
Mm-hmm.
And I've experienced coaches who aren't ICF aligned because they have differences of opinion with that organization. That's fine. That's theirs. Who were great. And I think the biggest thing about this way of interacting is that when it's honored as the client is the authority in their life, it's not about me telling them what to do or making suggestions or telling them not to do something. It's about really listening deeply and being reflective on what they're telling me, what they're sharing, so that we can unlock what they're really thinking, what they might not even be saying. But when it comes on the table, that they can tap back into their wisdom that's underneath the I shoulds. That's power. And like I've said elsewhere, my job is to ultimately be obsolete in my client's life. That they shouldn't need me forever. If my job is to help you be empowered and live how you want to live and achieve your goals, then I shouldn't be around forever on this. Let's get you there. If 6 months or a year or 2 years from now you're up against the next level of growth, let's re-engage. But it shouldn't have to be this ongoing journey all the time.
Wow. Thank you for that. So thank you, Daniel Olexa, CEO of Transcendent Living, LLC. Daniel, that was so insightful. I think all of us and all of our listeners.
And it went really fast.
Learned so much. So yeah. So thank you to our sponsors: Cohn Resnick Advisory, Assurance, and Tax Services, City National Bank, Cigna, Uncle Nearest, and C-Suite Executive Search. If you're hiring for your team, do give us a call. Thank you for listening. Beth, where does everybody find us?
Yes. And Daniel, how do they find you, more importantly?
Yes, that's a great question.
Easiest way to find me is online at transcendentliving.com, or you can type in danielalexa.com because they both go to the same place.
Wonderful. Good. Thank you for that. So we'll get this wrapped up and we'll get this out on Spotify, Apple, everywhere you find your podcasts. And also follow us on C-Suite Media, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. We will be putting this out on LinkedIn and across all the social platforms, so you'll have it for your reference. And we appreciate you very much, Daniel. And thank you for being part of C-Suite.
Thank you.
Thank
Honored.
you.